will just keep it.
Yeah, go live. Yeah. Summer day at Bangalore, and I can see some of you saying hot, hot day. Ritvika Roy, Shibu Nabubarsha, you're saying, and yes, I mean, Poila Boshak, and Bihu, Puttande, Vishu, just so many New Years that India celebrates. And Muttama, such a pleasure. I know it's an important festival, but lovely that you've joined us and, sending out happiness and prosperity to all our supporters, to all readers, young and old, everywhere. So really, I mean the Tamil, I mean the New Year's. Yeah, I know you're putting it on Instagram. Sham's just connecting us up on Instagram, so I want to say hello to everyone there as well. Is it live? Hello to our friends who are joining us on Instagram this hot summer day from Bangalore. And I'm not sure what the weather is like everywhere else, but I'm assuming that it's pretty sunny everywhere at the moment. And Ritvika, wishing us a happy new year. We're, wishing everybody watching. Wherever you are from India and you're celebrating New Year's, whether it's Baisakhi, Bihu, Puttande, Vishu, Poila Boishak, all of these festivals adding so much color to our lives. And yes, I agree entirely with Ritvika, who says, what a lovely day to talk about rebel girls. Good morning stories for rebel girls. Oh my God. And she says 38 degrees in Kolkata and she's melting. Us spoilt Bangaloreans, it's probably just 33 or 34 degrees here, and we're like, oh my God, we can't deal with this heat. But yes, for all our friends joining us, this is Funky Rainbow's Book Bazaar. I mean, our friends on Instagram who are watching. This is a book show that we've been hosting for 3 years now. Most Saturdays, we host a show themed on children's books, and the theme this morning is Good Morning Stories for Rebel Girls on iconic Indian women. And we just everyone, all my colleagues know that when the book Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls came out, one of my greatest peeves, I mean, the book was a master, I mean, it was produced so masterfully. I mean, the wonderful illustrations, the great pioneering women featured in the book as well. But one of my pet peeves was the video that they made, to launch the book, where they said, do we have books where women are writers? Do we have books where women are pilots? Do we have books where women are scientists? And the creators of the Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls, tried to pick out books from Western bookshelves where they couldn't find, books of women who were, let's say, political leaders or scientists or singers. Just couldn't find enough of them. And I kept saying, we have so many in the Indian context. And we must say that, fortunately, Indian children's writers and illustrators doing a lot to showcase the work of pioneering women who have surely shown many of us the way and will continue to show younger generations the way, the way, and mostly, make the roads for us to travel on, those who've gone before, making these wonderful roads that make it easy for us to set out to do just what we want to. And and hence the name of the bazaar, Good Morning Stories for Rebel Girls. We have a lot of them, folks. And I thought we would use this bazaar, to showcase some of the lovely ones in our collection. Of course, we've got a wonderful guest joining us later in the show, an author, whose books have burst upon the scene in the last 4 5 years, winning many, many awards. But her latest, most current book on one of India's most iconic women, I'm talking of Nandita Dukuna, the author, and her excellent book on Homai Vayarwala. I mean, I have waited and waited and waited, especially, we lost Homai Vairawala in 2012. And, I've read so many beautiful features on her life, seen so many stunning photographs that I think show the transition of India from the British rule to an independent country, capturing those moments so brilliantly. And I've always wondered, why in a larger collection of stories on iconic women she finds small mention. Why won't we have one full book? And here it is. Who clicked that pick? So Nandita Dukuna and Priya Kurian, who've created this beautiful picture book, Nandita is going to join us later in the show to talk about this iconic Indian woman photojournalist. Ritvika, you're saying, hope the fourth volume of Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls includes the women of Shaheen Bagh. Love how Samina Mishra represents it through Nida. Absolutely. I mean, that's what I've been trying to say. I'm not saying that enough has been done. There's always room for representing all kinds of realities in Indian children's books, because that's just the greatest way to open conversations, open minds, build borders, build bridges. I mean, open borders and build bridges. And I love it that Indian creators have actually come far ahead, when it comes to representing women in space, women in art, women in science, women in entertainment, women writers, women, artists. It's just, it's wonderful the numbers that we can actually pick up. And, Ritvika referring to Samina Mishra, whose lovely whole book, Nida Finds a Way, brings in the protests, the CAA, NRC protests, that happened a couple of years ago into the book so wonderfully. So, hence the title, Good Morning Stories for Rebel Girls. I really hope you enjoy the collection of books that we have picked. Muttama, of course, is prompt to point out, saying, gosh, I remember your rant so well. You took action on it, and how. And it's taken these many years. So we are books people, all of us at Team Funky Rainbow, just books people. And so I thought it was just apt to start with two lovely books on women writers who've made a mark and who've really shown us why voices must never be stifled. There's this lovely, lovely little picture book on Mahadevi Varma, and I learned, actually, I know Muttama knew a lot more about her, having read, in Hindi some of Mahadevi Varma's writings. But for me, this little biography, I did, of course, know of her, but this little biography by Falguni Gokhale, telling us, how words made a huge, huge difference to Mahadevi Varma. I mean, her lovely poems and her stories, one of India's most prolific writers, such an inspiration. And what does this little biography do? It takes us into the life of young Mahadevi Varma to tell us, how, the school that she went to was a great source of inspiration, because she met so many different kinds of girls in the school in Allahabad. I think she went to school in Allahabad, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's right. She went to a school in Allahabad where she met girls from so many different cultures who studied with her, and how that had a huge impact on her writing, on how much she believed. I mean, she was a very thoughtful and observant young girl herself, but that impact of meeting girls from different cultures and studying with them, how it inspired her to write of unity in diversity. Such an important lesson for all of us. So, this lovely little picture book biography of Mahadevi Varma, and how can we not include Lavanya Karthik's wonderful book on Mahashweta Devi. Ritvika, you must be thrilled. I mean, here's a pioneering Bengali writer, and of course, an iconic Indian writer for all of us, like, whose story, her younger days, portrayed so beautifully by Lavanya Karthik in her wonderful Little Dreamers series. And the way she tells the story of of a young girl, inspired completely by words. This story is the story of a young girl called Cuckoo. She was not Mahashweta Devi then as a young girl, and you can see these lovely black and white illustrations. I mean, two color illustrations that really, go into exploring how a love for words, shaped young Cuckoo's life. I mean, what did she do? How did she, how the parents were quick to notice that the child really had a love for books and words, and how that go on to shape her personality as a writer, a human rights champion. I mean, we know Mahashweta Devi's iconic books, children's books that we have access to in English and other languages, the YY Girl and Our Incredible Cow, and a lot of other books for adults that Seagull has brought out, showing us, how she championed equality all her life. I mean, this little episode about the right to education for girls. I mean, that was how that changed little Cuckoo's life, and how she ensured that it changed many lives going forward. Two wonderful books on writers, Mahadevi Varma and Mahashweta Devi. Ritvika saying her stories that we studied in school were early learnings of feminism for us. Indeed, I can imagine. And I, would love to hear them being read in Bengali. I've read them all in English. I mean, I love the story of Nyayadosh, the cow, like, right, who's absolutely crazy for Hilsa fish, and I would love to hear those stories read to me, because I know the stories now. I would love to hear them in Bengali, and maybe you should do some readings, Ritvika, that we can all listen to. I mean, what iconic, inspiring writers, what pioneering Indian women in every way. And of course, because our heart is in books and reading and writing, we wanted to sort of start with two writers. We do move on to two wonderful artists. I mean, you can say that we are so partial to the creative, side of life, but really, it just amazes me, when I read books like this one, which is the next one that I'm going to recommend, which is a visual autobiography of the lovely, wonderful tribal artist Bhuri Bai Bhil. Dotted Lines, published by Katha, is such a visual, wonderful, autobiography written by Bhuribai herself. I mean, in association with the publishers at Katha, telling her story of, it begins as a little girl. She says, "My name is Bhuri, and I live in Jhabua, which is a village in Madhya Pradesh, India." And you can see illustrated as well by Bhuri by herself, that beautiful dotted style, so colorful, so earthy at once, talking about what she, what her life, what her childhood was. Here in the first visual that I sort of showed you, she's talking about her mother, cleaning the courtyard every morning. She's talking about, various objects that are there, in her house, essentially. And she goes on to narrate. I mean, we often pick these up thinking that we're going to read stories of great tragedy. It is, I mean, at 7 years, you're not in school, you're not sitting in the comfort of your home and reading a book. You're out working in the fields with your parents. I mean, she started to accompany her parents who worked in the fields when she was 7 years old. So we tend to think that, they are stories of, of great tragedy. But they are some of the most uplifting books, these visual biographies that I've read. And in this case, an autobiography. They are such uplifting books because they show, what it takes to circumvent the odds, like, to battle against the odds and discover your own creative powers. I mean, some of us who do it, in a space of privilege, know how hard it is, even when you have everything going for you, and to do it when you do not have anything to go, anything that's going for you, and recounting a life that we are so unfamiliar with. I mean, I really doff my hat, to these wonderful artists who've colored our books and colored our world so exquisitely. And Buri Bai Bhil, whom we almost chanced upon at Bhopal, but unfortunately it didn't happen. I remember Sham and I had gone to do some work with the Parag, Tata Trust folks, and Bhuri Bai Bhil was supposed to visit, but unfortunately that visit got called off. It would have been one of the greatest moments in my life, I think, if I had met her, because such wonderful books in our collection illustrated by her. So that's one artist. And the other artist, who I was introduced to, and I'm sure many of you have been as well, Teju Ben, through Tara's wonderful book, Drawing from the City. Again, just look at the style, like, right? Look at this beautiful, I mean, illustrated by Teju Ben, telling Teju Ben's story essentially. And this is a story of a little girl who sees a train go past her house every day. And, she's like, I want to get away from my dusty village. I want to get away from, this place. And I want to, go to the city. In fact, she's always, as a young girl, as the train goes past, she whispers to the train saying, can you take me to the city? And of course, she's done this book when she was a middle-aged woman, but she just draws and tells an incredible story of abject poverty. I mean, that's in her village, and how her rich inner imaginative world, which she converts into such beautiful art, actually gave her the strength, absolutely the strength, to combat the abject poverty of her life. Again, like I said, when you first pick it up, you feel, gosh, are we going to read a story of terrible suffering? But like Bhuri Bai Bhil, Teju Behen's story too, drawing from the city, which she in which she sort of gives her worldview via art, of the city, of the big city that she moves to. I mean, she reminisces about life in the village. She talks about what's in the city. It's such just a fantastic testimony to how she is able to use her imagination and her art to uplift herself and us in the process. Very, very beautiful books. I mean, all of these that I've been recommending so far, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, what ages. This one, can be read out to 3+ year olds. If children have to read on their own, I'd say 5+. These ones, the Dreamers series, and there are several books in the series, would work for 6+. Bhuri Bai Bhil story, simple picture book, would work for 5+ year olds. And this excellent Tara's books, which are all ageless. I mean, really, young readers can read it. We'd say 5+, 6+. You can see not that much text in there, but also so meaningful and relevant for readers of all ages, starting from the age 5 or 6, going up to, till whenever you are reading. Beautiful book, beautiful tribal artists who show us through their stories, through their life stories, what it is to, what it is to channelize your inner creativity, your inner imagination, and create beautiful worlds inside and outside. Just such stunning books and such iconic women, definitely in my book, definitely in the book of all of us at Funky Rainbow. From that, we move on to someone I think many of you love. Mm, this is the wonderful singer Usha Uttup. And I have two books about her. Some of the recommendations are books about the same people but written for two different age groups. So we know, I mean, I grew up in Calcutta, and I do know, Usha Uthup's shows and concerts were always like, my parents were always talking about, going to listen to her sing. I mean, what a lady, what a striking presence, what a voice. I mean, in silks and a handful of bangles and jasmine from her hair, but just belting out music so wonderfully, in sometimes in just absolute vivacious singing style, sometimes so mellifluously and beautifully. Usha Uthup was really iconic for many of us growing up. And for young people today, I think these two books, which is Pearl de Silva's brand new book called Rockstar in a Sari, illustrated by Vasundhara Arora, this one published by Iktara. It is just such, you meet a young girl with a dream to be on stage. And, Pearl Mascarenas tells the story so beautifully. How does that dream become a reality? Did it help that Usha knew so many languages, that she could sort of sing in so many languages? And she had a very unusual voice for singers at that time, like, singing in full throated ease. I mean, really, even today, when you hear Usha Uttup, you don't even need to know what is happening. You know that voice is Usha Uttup's. And yes, of course, Ritvika Roy is saying that iconic customized bindi. Really, I mean, what an iconic woman she is, and she continues to be. I'm just delighted, how Pearl Mascarenas has told her story of what makes her a rock star in a sari. Really, I mean, I just loved this picture book, and I'm so glad, contemporary Indian women too. Like, right? I mean, young people, they need icons from the past. They need icons from the present. We need books of people who are probably already household names. We also need books of people who are possibly not that well known, and from all walks of life. I'm utterly and absolutely, enjoyed reading Rockstar in a Sari, published by Iktara. In fact, when I was talking to Nandita Dukuna, who's going to join us later in the show to talk about her excellent picture book biography of Homai Vairavala, she said there were three books that came out in this series simultaneously. There was Who Clicked That Pic, there was Rockstar in a Sari, and there's Lady Tarzan, which we are still waiting to reach us. I'm sure, that would be a lovely book. Three pioneering, wonderful women, whose stories are told in picture book form. And of course, for kids that are just slightly older, there's Mamta Naini's that big voiced girl, how Usha Uttup rocked her unusual voice. I mean, this one illustrated by Asma Noor. Really, that unusual voice. I mean, I can just imagine that, there's an anecdote in the book where somebody says, that's not the way a girl should sound. I mean, come on, is there a way in which a girl should sound? There is no right way, there is no wrong way. And boy, how well this girl sounded, really, right? So Mamta Neni too, talking about, in just for slightly older readers or perhaps the same age, we'd say this one is 6 plus, and maybe the Iktara book would work, 4 plus, 5 plus. I mean, these age categories just simply, in our heads, if you feel you want to introduce these to young readers, and you can see that they are pretty visually illustrated. Even in this book, the determination, one, the knowledge or the awareness that, you wanted to be on stage and you wanted to be a singer, that, that comes through in both books. And what she does to get there, illustrated so beautifully in these picture and chapter book biographies. I think, I'm just utterly delighted that we have books on someone we considered iconic growing up, for sure. And from there, to the field of sports, I'm just keeping watch of the time. There's lots and lots of books on iconic Indian women, and I will show you a couple of them. But I do want to catch that conversation with Nandita, so she can talk about Homai Vairawala, who, I mean, I think no words that I can say can say enough about an iconic woman photojournalist who just had such a brilliant eye for photography. Was able to capture iconic moments. I mean, like important moments in our history with such a splendid eye. I mean, I'm waiting to hear more about her. I haven't read, except for features in magazines and a lot of tributes that came out when she passed away. I haven't actually read a book on Homai Vairawala, and I'm like wondering why. Because in a couple of recent exhibitions that I've been to, I went to the Cochin Biennale. There was a segment of Homai's photographs, Homai Vairawala's photographs, and there's one when a photograph where there are different Indian leaders sitting, and Nehru's putting his hand up. I think they had to pass a vote on partition, and I think there's just something about that photograph that makes you feel, gosh, how many of us didn't want it? And yet it happened. I mean, imagine being able to capture that in a photograph. So I really, would love to sink my teeth into a book for adults for whom but delighted that there's one for children, certainly. But I moved to sport. It's an area, I was watching a couple of matches of the women's IPL. I thoroughly enjoyed watching a couple of the matches, and I felt, man, I mean, these women, they've come, these sports, these young girls, actually, possibly all 18 and 19 and 20, coming onto the field, taking the bat, bowling. I mean, demonstrating so much team spirit, like a fighting spirit. It is just admirable, to see young, people um, just stride out into the world to do exactly what they set out to do. So I thought two books on sport are just absolutely mandated. There is Adi Dev's Trust with PT Usha, written by Pervin Saket and illustrated by Rajeshri Sarkar. Now, this is about PT Usha. I know, I think everybody is probably going to say, hey, you've picked all the athletes and singers from your times, but what to do? These figures were so much part of our growing years. I mean, I remember in the 80s watching the Asian Games, rooting for PT Usha, and those were days of, non glamorous sports stars. So everything was actually focused on the sport, the running. I mean, in Usha's case, the running. And when that Olympic, medal went off by a whisker, really, I mean, our hearts just absolutely broke. But boy, what an inspiring sports person she was. And in this little board book, Pervin, focusing on how important it is for an athlete to have a wonderful, wonderful, trusting relationship with her coach, with their coach. And this Paioli Express, PT Usha, who came from the village of Paioli, the Paioli Express, and her coach Nambiar. The book demonstrates for our youngest readers, that trust is so important to make an athlete who they are, and why it's important for you to have that, to have that faith in order to bring out the best in you. It's really lovely, that in fact, there's one small segment in the book. I will show that one to you. I mean, just think of those simple times, like, right? He needed her to be there for practice on time. She had to, jump a whole bunch of hurdles, and the reward was an extra toffee. I mean, I'm like, did we live in those simple times? Utma, you're saying it's a privilege to be able to pay tribute to our icons through our very own platform. Feels so very good. Absolutely, it does. I'm so delighted that there's a chance to talk about PT Usha, who, I think the television came to India. There was the Asian Games. Those were amongst the first broadcasts that we watched. And so Usha, and her running and her athletic running, a source of so much inspiration for all of us, really. And I can't get enough of Lavanya's Dreamer series. I just love the way she's picked just single anecdotes from the life of the personality that she's writing on, to demonstrate how she or he, we've picked the books on women at the moment, but there are men in the Dreamer series as well. To that anecdote or the episode simply beautifully illuminates how how they went on to become who they eventually became. And this one on Bachendri Pal, the girl who climbed mountains, again, I mean, that first one to summit the Everest. Of course, we'd heard of Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, but when an Indian, and that connection with the Tatars, I think she was supported by the Tatars. I mean, we were so thrilled to know that an Indian woman, Bachendri Pal, was the first Indian woman to summit the Great Everest. And look at Lavanya's illustrations. I mean, this use of color, just two colors, is so vivid, so beautiful. I mean, how can you not be drawn into a book? I mean, of course, she's the one who climbed Mount Everest, but what is it? What Lavanya shows us through the book is how she was actually a little girl with big dreams, with dreams that were as high up as the sky, and of course, eventually as high up as the Everest. So that's what she does. Look at the illustrations. I mean, I can't help go back to these dreamer books over and over and over again. I mean, simply to soak in the beauty of the wonderful illustrations and the great stories that Lavanya Karthik tells. So, Bachendri Pal, the first Indian woman to get to the summit of the Everest, a beautiful book. Two very, very sporty women, and I'm delighted that they are in our midst at the moment, coaching our young athletes, or mountaineers, or I mean, working with our teams who are all now competing at an international level. I know Usha is training, our Olympic runners, and I know Bachendri Pal is working constantly with, various sporting. I mean, she's not limited herself to working only with mountaineers. I think she trains teams that swim, teams that play cricket, teams that play, football. It's just lovely that these women, giving back, to younger women, so that their path ahead, so that they can realize their dreams and achieve their goals. Lavanya Karthik, we just love the Dreamers series, of course we do, and or we're always recommending them. I'm going to move on. Can you tell me what the time is? Okay, so I'll probably do a clutch of more recommendations before we say it's 11:45. All right. So I wanted to also showcase the life of Janaki Ammal, because we didn't know that much about this wonderful botanist and her love for trees and plants and nature, till two wonderful books came out. Again, Adidev's done these books for younger kids. I mean, in the sense that they are board books, there's perseverance. So Adidev's focus is on the values, like a core value of that personality or icon that made a huge difference to their lives, while Lavanya's is one episode from their childhood that defined who they were and how they grew up to be who they were. So again, Janaki Ammal, we knew, we had read of her in a few biographies. I mean, there's a whole bunch of books that we have at Funky Rainbow, which are compilations of iconic Indian women. I mean, Like a Girl, the Gutsy Girls of Science, there's just She Can, You Can, there's just a whole lot of them. But books that delve into specific, like at the Bazaar today, we've picked specific personalities. And Janaki Ammal's story begins from girls not even being allowed to go to school. And you know what? she was utterly and absolutely this woman of science who, I mean, this young girl who went on to become a pioneering woman of science, was determined to change that rule. Now, how does she do it? I mean, how did she end up becoming India's first woman botanist? I mean, Pervin's book, talks, traces her life, but talks about her undying perseverance. I mean, she never stopped trying, persevering to get what she wanted. And while she got what she wanted, she cleared the way, she made the path for others to rush right in as well. And so her focus, and this book, written again by Pervin Sakit, it's part of a series of scientists. I mean, four women scientists, and it used to be only available as a box set, but now available as individual books. Now, this one, has other scientists as well, like the Dr. Anandibai Joshi and, Janaki Ammal. What did she do? She just absolutely persevered to make sure that her dream to be in the midst of nature, to be in the midst of plants and trees, and to study them scientifically, if for that dream to come true. So Pervin writes in verse, and this book has been illustrated by Annada Menon. And the girl who was a forest, which is again Janaki Ammal, with Lavanya Karthik. And this series is such a delight because each one has a different color, where she talks about how she broke out of the rigid rules that were imposed upon women, and women forever, the ones who have to bear the brunt of various rules, mostly kind of senseless patriarchal gender stereotyped kind of rules. I mean, what did these women do? Why is it so easy for us to do what we're doing today? Simply because these pioneering ladies, uh, went there first. They traveled that road first. And in Lavanya's book, the episode, and I'm not going to tell you the story of that anecdote that she uses from her childhood, but obviously, Janaki loved nature. And of course, nature always shows you the way. So, how did it show Janaki Ammal the way to become India's first lady botanist? Lovely, lovely books, all meant really for readers starting as young as 2, 3. You can be reading this out to them. The board books and the Dreamers series, 5, 6, 7. Really, I mean, even us, way older than the target audience the target audience of these books, absolutely and utterly enjoy reading them. I'm going to say, just recommend one more set of books which came in from Speaking Tiger. There are four books in the series, but I've chosen two of them, written by Swati Sengupta, whose writing we've always greatly admired. I mean, there was a fantastic book, Guns on My Red Earth, I think. Yeah, that's what it's called. I'm afraid it's not in print at the moment, where she writes of a Nakshal, of a young person, of a teenager in a Nakshal setting, a young Nakshal teenager, and what that entire Swati, I think, has researched that area, researched the Naxalite movement. My God, it was such an eye-opening book for me to know what it is like life on the ground. Where you're fighting, rebelling, protesting, you're staying underground, you're staying undercover. Fantastic book that she had done. I truly wish the publishers bring it back in print, a young adult novel that very much deserves to be in print. And then Swati did this lovely book for Tulika called The Talking Bird. And I grew up in Calcutta, and the picture book about this mother who buys a parrot, a little toy parrot for her child. And on the way back in the bus, the parrot suddenly starts to speak. What a delightful story it is. So funny, so lovely. But the lovely illustrations of Calcutta just leapt off that page. So Swati Sengupta her writing has always excited me. And I was delighted to see Speaking Tiger doing these two. I mean, there are four biographies, but I'm showing you two wonderful women There's Jhalkari Bai, this is the Incredible Life series. There's Jhalkari Bai, the Braveheart Warrior, and there's Savitri Bai Phule, the Fearless Reformer. We do know how iconic Savitri Bai Phule was, how Jyotibai Phule and her fought for the education, because that's the key. Finally, that's the key. Access to education, access to books, access to reading, it just transforms lives, and we can't say it enough, that no matter where you come from, no matter what the background, give children access to great books, because that just changes their outlooks, it just changes their mindsets, it inspires them to truly go out there and achieve their potential. So that while we do know a lot about Savitri Bai Phule, Jhalkari Bai, that the Braveheart warrior, everything that I read about her, I have only simply read and found out from this book. It does say 10 plus, but I do feel that, it could work for slightly younger readers. You can see there's not that much. I mean, the text is fairly large, really, right? Now, who was Jhalkari Bai, an important member of the Rani of Jhansi's army. I didn't know at all about her bravery, her valor, and perhaps the strength of the Rani of Jhansi came a lot from women, from incredible warrior women who donned saris but got on their horses with their swords and fought bravely against the British, to rid India of British rule. I really thank Swati Sengupta for this wonderful book on Jhalkari Bai. I mean, she had a tragic story, but I'm not going to tell you more, because all the while, till tragedy befell her, so many acts of courage that I think bolstered the Rani of Jhansi's arm. It bolstered the Rani of Jhansi's courage, and made her strong and resolute in her battle against the British. uh, Ritvika is saying, reminds me of Mandira Shah's Children of the Hidden Land, and Shalini's April and Shalini's Subversive Rebellion. Indeed, I really wish they'd bring Guns on My Red Earth. The Maoist movement, the Naxalite movement, we know so little about what it is to really be underground, to live undercover. And Swati, I think, had researched a lot of it as a journalist and was able to weave it in so beautifully into her book. It's such a lovely book, and I urge, the publishers were Red Turtle. I do hope they can bring it back. And you say that you missed a bit in the middle because my network cut off. Yes, but Devika Rangachari's Queen series with the historic rebel queens is just amazing. Even in that series, even in that case, Didda and Pritta Mahadevi, we knew so little. We know, I mean, and of course, the third one is again the Rani of Jhansi, but we knew so little about Didda and Pritta Mahadevi till Devika Rangachari wrote about them. But I'm going to, close with these recommendations, because I want to check if Nandita is online, has Nandita joined us, and get on to chatting with her about the one and only incredible Homai Vairavala. So I'm just going to, folks, lots of these books available at Funky Rainbow. Just WhatsApp us on 99004 95665. The numbers up on the screen. We can recommend reads for children of all ages, for adults of all ages as well, because most picture books are best read by, most children's books are best read by adults as well. So do get in touch with us. We've got so many exciting books on iconic Indian women that I think will uplift your spirits, will uplift the spirits of young readers as well, and make our world a more fair, just, and equitable place going forward. So, can we have Nandita join us, and then can we also, connect her on Instagram, Sham? Just a second, folks. We're just going live with Nandita. Hi, Nandita.
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second. I'm Can you hear me, Nandita?
I can hear you, Vidya. What about me?
No, hang on a second.
Okay,
You, I'm not able to hear you consistently. Just hang on a second. I'll see if there's something with my audio. Let me
sure.
just fix that. It's got to be speakers, right? Not headphones. The out my output. It's speakers, but it was coming in bits and pieces. Anyway, let's. Yeah, we're also sending you the invite on Instagram, Nandita.
I'm just checking for that.
Yes. Have you received it?
Yes, just come in.
Super.
And I believe I'm on. Okay.
Yeah, there we are. We're just, Shamshi's, I think you need to turn off the volume on your. Just a sec, Nandita. We'll get this tech fixed, then introduce you to our audiences. Turn down your audio. Okay. All the advice to Nandita Sham. We're going to do tech check with you as well now. Okay? Welcome, Muttamate says, welcome, Nandita. Lovely to have you with us. Can't wait to hear about the book and your research. But, folks, before we get started, I want to say Nandita's had this most exciting career. I didn't know, like I said, when I started off the show, she burst upon the scene, maybe 2020, 2021. I think that's when your books.
September 2020, my first book.
Yeah, exactly. And she's done 6, 7 books in quick succession, many of them that have made it to award shortlists, many of them that have won awards. And when she sent me her bio note, she says she made a drastic career change 5 years ago. Moving from working as a consultant with companies like KPMG and Arthur Anderson to straight off writing for children. We are just absolutely delighted that career trajectory happened, Nandita, because our world is richer for the wonderful books that you have written, for children. I wanted to say that she's done 7 books since 2020. She's done 7 books for children. Besides the new one that's come out from Katha, called Where I Belong, which we don't have. We've been running after the publishers, but I'm afraid we've just not received, stocks of that book. I think they've just printed a run for the World Book Fair and then not done. Yes, Nandita has them, and I'm so jealous. I'm like, give that to me, like, right?
I'll send them this clip.
Please cut and paste
Do
this.
my bit to try and yes.
And besides that one, we have every one of her books, which Sham just sort of rushed past. But the first one that we were really introduced to, the Miracle, in Sundar Bagh Street, we just utterly loved
And yours
this
was the
book.
first show that talked about it.
Really, was that right?
Absolutely remember.
Well, ours, 3 years ago, and we're like, okay, but it was such a lovely book, especially in the context of the environment and the little girl, and the story of transforming that garden with Guppy was, such a lovely. So many copies of the book just flew off our shelves when
Priya
we.
Korean once again, the Priya Korean magic.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's Miracle on Sundar Bagh Street. Then she did Just Like Papa, for Tota Books, a sweet story of a young girl and her father. And of course, we know that Nandita is interested in feisty heroines. So there is the magic in my fingers, about the life and times of an iconic singer, Ashapurna Devi, and which she did for Karadi Tales. Then she's done Pedro and the Big Boom with Kalpavriksha. So a great environmental angle in this book as well. My Trip to La La Land, which came out, I think, just maybe a year ago or so, set high up in the mountains of Ladakh. But again, a feisty young girl, I mean, who's unwillingly moves up to Ladakh, but then finds friendship, adventure, and herself. in those mountains, essentially. And I do want to say that, just like Papa was shortlisted for the Jarul Children's Choice Book Award, My Trip to La La Land and Pedro and the Big Boom made their way into the Parag honor list. It was My Trip to La La Land that made its way into the Parag honor list 2023. Isn't that correct?
Pedro and the Big Boom.
Pedro, is it? Okay, okay. And the other one was longlisted for the author awards, essentially, isn't it? Yeah. And there was the Miracle on Sundar Bagh Street that everybody loves. You, that won the Neve Award, the Neve Book Award 2021, a special jury award by Fiki, essentially for the best book for children, and was a 2021 Parag honor list book as well. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen who've joined us on Instagram and on Facebook and YouTube, a much feted author. But now I feel, after reading the book that she's going to talk about, who clicked that pic on Homai Vairawala, I have a feeling that I'm going to really struggle between Miracle on Sundar Bagh and this one, which is going to
You're
be
very kind with that.
the,
Too kind in that. Yeah, I think we'll move on to the book.
the same creators, Priya Kurian and Nandita, working on. But I can't tell you, Nandita, we waited and waited and waited for a book on Homai Vairawala. I'll tell you why. Because when she passed away in 2012, so many beautiful features were written all over the internet. I mean, written by a homegrown in India, maybe, like, written by on New York Times, the BBC. And I was like, my God, why don't we have a children's book on an iconic lady, India's first woman photojournalist? And so tell us, how did you come upon the idea of writing this book?
What's more wonderful is she was kind of rediscovered. um a couple of years before, and then there were actually there was a biography written about her, a very in-depth biography by Sabina Korioke, uh,
Okay.
and with a lot of her photographs published by the Al-Qazi Foundation, which now has the rights to her
Or
photos.
the
There was an
photographs?
exhibition in Bombay, which Homa actually was then by then in the 90s, which she attended. Because of this book, there was a lot of interest. There was a documentary done on her. So she was actually and in her usual way, she kept saying, "I don't know what the fuss is about. I burnt most of my photographs." She was
Really
by then living this
burnt.
quite secluded life. She didn't believe there was anything to talk about. But that was the woman, and so she was rediscovered. And the last couple of years, a lot of interviews were held and documented, and that was the time actually. When I discovered
Yeah.
the wonderful life of Homai, and so many fascinating aspects to it. I think for me, one part of it was, of course, her, like I said, trailblazing life, and her journey as a photographer and what she did, and we can go on talking about that. And the other was the woman herself,
Yeah.
um, the personality, the values. In fact, I've tried to do in my book through various incidents is really immerse the reader into the personality that was Homai, her approach to life, her integrity, honesty, humor, no nonsense approach, perseverance. There's so much I can keep on talking about. So that was the second part, in terms of why I was drawn to
Oh
writing
my
about
Bala,
it.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
Just one quick request before we kind of. I think you're a bit on the side for Instagram. Is it possible to kind of move in a little bit and come into the screen? Mutma putting out a comment saying that if you can just adjust the view a bit, otherwise you may go off screen a bit. Can you see yourself clearly up on screen?
Um,
You okay? It's okay. I think we're all right. If now that you've moved in a bit, I think you're all right.
okay. Is this better?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. So
Right.
yeah, that you actually almost led me to the next question. So you've there are pictures that Pari, the protagonist of this book, is clicking, and I just love how every single photograph is disrupted, or something happens in the course of taking that photograph. But these were actual, they were real events from Homai's life, essentially, right? Different events. I mean, you have, of course, pieced it together like one narrative over here, essentially. And with through that, you give a snapshot view of her life, the times, her career. Now, was it the picture book format that necessitated this choice of having to pick incidents and give photographic views of these incidents from her life, or was it what you did you already kind of decide on that, Nandita?
So that's a very interesting question. I think there are many ways to approach a picture book biography, and nowadays we're seeing a lot of picture book
That's right.
biographies. A lot of interest in the genre. The first is, of course, a very linear telling of someone's life, beginning
That's
to
right.
end, and the key milestones, the journey, what made a person, or what they are. And that was in a format I was looking at because I wanted to attract all kinds of readers, those interested in fiction, non-fiction. I wanted
Very
a more dramatic way of telling the story to immerse a reader in the story. And I think the second way of doing it is what I did with this book that we spoke about, about Annapurna Devi, where you take one incident, one moment that might be a defining moment in someone's life. In her case, despite Baba not allowing her to play, and Baba was Alauddin Khan in those days. The sitar, I mean, her talent couldn't be suppressed for who she was. So for me, that one defining moment where, despite not being allowed because she was a girl, she was discovered. Her talent was discovered because of who she was. So I took that incident and built a whole story around that. And I wanted initially to do the same in this case. So I began researching, and I found a moment, an event, and then another and another. Uh, and I couldn't select. And here I was surrounded by, these about a dozen fascinating events. And I said, I want to talk about them all. Yes, absolutely. Each one brought out a different facet of her personality, as I said. So, and then it came upon, I know, just this idea came that why not put them all and weave them all somehow, still in a single story, which is what I've done. That is at a single point of time, and now therefore it's fictionalized. I tell it through the eyes of Pari, who's a young girl out in the streets of 1930s Bombay, and
Um,
she's got 10 photographs left in her roll, and she's waiting to get that perfect shot. And each time she attempts a photograph, something happens. And each one of those bloopers or incidents that sort of prevents the perfect shot has some connection to Homai's life and how she dealt with her own peculiar and unique brand of photography.
that,
So at the end, I have a note that links real events
yes,
with these, but really this whole format came about from my trying to fictionalize a story and having such a wealth of wonderful anecdotes to choose from. So I tried and kept them all in.
and not wanting to choose only a couple of them, but wanting to put all of them in.
Even so, I had to cherry pick because, like I said, we have
That's
32
right.
pages in a picture book.
That
So
is
the way
right.
I did this, I tried to filter it such that each event brought out one different aspect. So one might be about how she persevered and sheer focus, even put herself out there in terms of physical danger, no matter what. One might be about her integrity. She'd never put her subject in any kind of discomfort. One might be about the kind of photography she loved, which was, split second photography, live photography. And we're talking about the days when people took photographs in studios, posed
That's right.
photographs. Yes. So different, each incident, I tried to pick one that reflects a different aspect of who she was.
That's,
So that's how I managed to
comes through marvelously. I mean,
attempt
the
a different
anecdote
genre.
of,
Yeah.
I mean, one first and foremost, the book, with the book beginning on, man, I have only 10 photographs left in my roll. It's non-existent in today's world of Instagram and taking
Oh my God.
pictures, like, right? And I'm
When
like,
you read it to children, the first thing that attracts them to this book is the fact that it's set in a time in the 1930s Bombay when so much was unimaginable to them. You have 10 photographs left in a roll. What's that? You have to wait till it's printed in a dark room. What's that?
I know, what is that? Instant glorification people
Yeah,
we
what
are
one
now.
rupee can buy. I mean, there's so much to the book that they had to wrap their head around before they could come down to some of the other aspects and how she made it despite being a woman and all of that.
That's right. That's right. I can well imagine. I was reading it to a friend's daughter, And she said, my God, auntie, she tore off her sleeve, and because
Yes.
it got, she was so taken. And she said, oh, did her parents not scold her? I said, I don't think she was bothered whether her parents could scold her or not. Like, right,
The
and
kind of support she received from parents, brother, husband. It was actually her husband who would, first a friend and then a husband who would travel the streets with her and her 9 kilo camera strapped on her back. And
right,
at the time, and this is one aspect I found so fascinating. Um, Today, why be it Annapurna Devi, be it Homai, both of them, for them, their art was the ultimate pursuit. In terms of what they did, it wasn't about getting a byline or accolades and all of that. It did come later, but it didn't interest them.
that's
And so in those days, to have a woman, number one, roaming the streets of Bombay, because those days you were accompanied with a camera that she's holding herself, taking photographs. Let's take this one step further, trying to get it published professionally. It was unheard of. It was not even accepted. So she published in her husband's name. That's a kind of
that's
support.
right.
Yeah. So when you see all of this, and for her it was not about the byline. It was about take the joy of getting
During
that
that
click.
moment.
Absolutely. So this fascinated me as well. I mean, these are the women who paved the way for some of the freedoms we sort of take for granted
Absolutely.
today. Uh,
Absolutely. I
because
was saying that right through the recommendations, the road that they laid, we walk or cycle or run or, tread very, with so much liberty on those roads because these people have sort of gone ahead. And that point, that you made so well, I mean, I mean, choosing a profession. And it was not like it was her husband who basically taught her the ins and outs of photography to a certain extent, like, right. And then she just catapulted, she took it elsewhere. She took that craft. She obviously had a gift for it. And so self-effacing in many ways, except that because she was a woman, she stood out in a melee of male photojournalists around Pandit Nehru or Gandhi. And isn't it
a
like,
single woman in a world of men, a
yeah,
world of men jostling and pushing to get the best photograph. But what she had, which was unique, was the kind of rapport she had with, like you mentioned, Nehru, who was a muse, and several
yes,
other political leaders of the day, because they trusted her.
that's
The
right.
values that I spoke about, the fact that she guarded their privacy. There's an incident which again I've sort of woven in where she once took a photograph of Nehru, which came out in a slightly awkward position. It almost looked like he was pulling the beard of another world political leader, and she refused to publish it. Now, when you think of it in these days, paparazzi and everyone trying to get, I can
Yes,
just imagine these kind of photographs going viral on Insta and what they can get you. But she had her own internal code of conduct.
yeah.
It was what guided, and therefore, and this reflects in her photographs, even though a lot of them are political and they're about transition of India from pre-independence, post-independence. But what you actually get there are the emotions from the people because they let her into their lives. So you see Nehru with his sister. You see very private moments of people, and she had that rapport with people, and I think a lot had to do with her values.
That's right.
For the
I think it clearly reflected in her life, her photographs, her career, even the close of the career when she said, "Look, this paparazzi kind of journalism is not my cup of
how
tea."
rare that is. And she was at the peak of her career,
Really,
and potentially many years to go when she quit. She quit at the top because this new journalism didn't suit her. The
that's right.
inclusive style of
Yes.
paparazzi journalism. It didn't work for her.
That's right.
So
And in
she
fact,
stopped.
Muttama has put out a comment saying, she says, if I'm not mistaken, there's a brief reference to her in the series Rocket Boys. Mallika Sarabhai's first portfolio was developed in her studio, and Mrinalini Sarabhai went to her often. It could very much be a possibility because she just had these iconic photographs. I can never forget the photograph of Nehru, with the cigarette and lighting the, cigarette. I think it was a British High Commissioner's wife or something.
Loves that angle and the beauty of, and she loved black and white photography even
Yes,
later after progress because and yet the emotions came through because of the angle of her shots, the texture, the beauty. Yeah, so
I
much love in the way she took her photographs.
yeah, my gosh, really. The more I speak to you, the more I have to take that name of that book that you mentioned because I do want to read it. I've only read articles and features, and now this children's book on Homai Vairwala. I haven't read one for adults. I would love to read.
I'll send you the name. Sabina Gadi. Okay.
Yes, please do. So one of the questions that I did want to ask you, Nandita, is like, you've taken real people, real events, and made up stuff about what they've said, and so that you can create a really wonderful story. Now, what is this? Is this? I mean, and you rightly said. In fact, in the course of my recommendations at the beginning, there were so many biographies, and I wonder whether they fictionalized biographies, or are they biographical fiction? I mean, it's just us and those
So,
terms in
was
our
like, "Sis,
life.
and
Yeah,
what's your name?"
yeah. What do you? I mean, what do you think your book really is, and why did you sort of choose that format to?
I would love it if it confuses bookstore. Is this fiction? Do we put it in the non-fiction shelf? But I think, like you said, fictionalized biography,
Yes,
and the fact that, and I that's why I took care to have a different protagonist really. So it's Pari Mistry in the story.
that's right.
Um, not to create confusion in the mind of readers who goes through this whole adventure, and
Right.
that's why at the end the note became important, linking this with real events. Yeah, that's right. And likewise with Annapurna Devi, I actually had fictional protagonists who mirrored Annapurna Devi and Humayun in many ways, but because I was taking liberties, because I was dramatizing the story, adding um, fictional elements and so on in the narrative. So yes, it is fictionalized biography. And I do get questions
I
therefore like, Mr. Nakrawala, is he real? Please say
Mr.
he's
Nakrawala, I love that name as well,
real.
right?
And Priya Korean has just brought him alive.
I know.
And that's the thing. He's the epitome of, I think, every single editor in those days. Of, let's say, for example, she would publish in the Bombay Chronicle for 1 rupee her photographs. And also, for me, he just symbolizes the editor of those days, who's the guardian of the byline, and won't accept a woman's byline as So yeah, so all of these are a collage of many real, authentic events and people that come together.
And we are not going to tell our readers or people who are watching what happens in the end, but it's
No,
such
she
a
finds her own
brilliant
unique
start.
way, which you'll have to read about.
Especially Mr. Nakrawala. He's too good. He's a wonderful editor. I wish I had him as an editor to work. One thing that I couldn't help notice is that this fictional biography format that you've sort of chosen, really, I mean, it provides us insights into Homai's life, of course,
Yeah.
but it gives us a great sense of time and place. I mean, the 1930s, like, just starting from, gosh, I've got only 10 photos left in my roll. I had to hark back, like, right? We also had cameras where they had to be gone and given to the shop to develop, and, it had to sort of come back.
Don't waste a single,
No, no,
so
yeah, really.
a single moment. Yes, each is precious.
Yeah.
And
Why was that important? Why do you think that was important to you, to give readers a sense of time and place?
in fact, I'm going back to the first question you asked about what attracted me to the story, and it was Homai, her journey, the person she was, her life, and I think equally I'm quite a heritage buff, so it was something to do with
Ah,
a story set in Bombay of the 1930s, taking our readers back to times that today they can't imagine. In the when they have all the gadgets, anything and everything is available instantly, right? Instant gratification, multitasking that's possible. But in those days, the kind of focus she needed and perseverance to get that perfect picture and everything that it entailed. The streets of Bombay in those days, cosmopolitan Bombay, everyone out there celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi, so many other
ah,
aspects.
I have to,
And Priya brings those out so beautifully in illustrations as well, with such perfect detailing, authentic times. So I always wanted to do a book also set in Bombay of those times, the architecture, the culture, the you know taking children to a world that you're quite unfamiliar with. And
that's
then you see how so much has evolved, and you get a sense of where it came from. And like I was talking, the freedoms we have today, but also how technology has evolved. Um, the way women today broken the glass ceiling. I mean, a lot of things. You see how it evolved and where it came from.
that's
So
right.
that's another reason why I always wanted to write one book set in those times. And this just seemed like the perfect story to tell.
And I think it's important for us to know, and sometimes it's not, we don't get familiar with it when we're growing up. Maybe you need to be a little older. That most things are a continuum. It's not just one person doing one thing that sort of changed and made the way possible. It's a continuum of, I mean, if we have medical science has achieved so many things today, doctors and doctors have worked.
Those, yes.
Yes, yeah, building on the layers that people have sort of created. I think that comes through so marvelously. And I'm afraid Priya couldn't join us today, although she really wanted to, because I think this book is very very dear to her heart as well. She has an event going on in Bangalore today, but I think between you and Priya, you've just created magic in the book. I mean, as I was reading it, I literally felt that as if Priya and you were sitting next to each other, table like here, and so how did you collaborate on it? And I just want to, sorry, just show our readers a couple of spreads. That's it. This beautiful black and white picture in picture sort of thing, like, right? I mean, what a beautiful format. And the text says something, the pictures develop it, in ways that the words don't even need to sort of describe, essentially. Very very magical. So how did the two of you collaborate, Nandita?
Actually, this is my second book with Priya. We also had done the Miracle on Sundarbad Street, and next week we are releasing our third book together.
Oh, the
And
next one is
yeah,
the Sundarbag series.
you
Wow.
heard it first. Yes, and I think
What
what
is the name of the book? What is the name of the new one that's coming out?
it's another book with Kalpavriksh,
Are you
and
allowed to tell the title?
and I will share that it's the second book in the Miracle series.
Ah.
So yes.
So, people, you heard that first here on Book Bazaar. Like, all these inside stories are coming out in Book Bazaar. But sorry to interrupt. Please go
Also,
ahead and
right?
tell
So,
us.
not at all. And everyone asked me, especially after Sundar Bagh, and how did you all collaborate? And it's almost as if text and story have come to and picture images have come together. But the fact is, I have a text, I have a complete manuscript that might go through some rounds, and Priya gets that. As you know, she's Bangalore based, and she works on it, and she works her magic. Um, and the next I see it is often you know a brilliant finished picture book, because she just gets it.
Yeah.
And this book, of course, we may have shared some research, be it
Mm.
on Homai's life, be it on Bombay of the 30s, because in any case, done a lot of that, the dress, the culture, the times, what cars might have been there on the streets, and all of that, the
Yeah,
small
that's
details.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of research both into her life, into photography in those times, technology of those times, and what the streets of Bombay might have looked like, all these aspects. But as to the actual interplay, that was all Priya, all wonderful Priya. So, uh, and that really was the extent and be all of our collaboration on the book. And when you see it, I mean, there's not a thing I would change. It's
Yeah,
just like
absolutely.
I
I mean,
said,
it's
the
really.
people, the times, and what contrasts. I'm gonna hold up this
Yes,
page.
yes. I
Okay,
didn't want to
see
show
how
that one
you
because
see
how splendid is this, like,
how
right?
splendid is this. And I think this is her favorite spread. She would hold it up if she were here, so I'm doing it on her behalf.
I know. We had,
You see what Pari might see through her, and very cleverly, like you said, you'll see what Pari saw, and then you'll see what in black and white the image that she took, both overlaid, and this is the whole series, and then all of a sudden you get a spread like this, dramatic and brilliant in contrast. So,
it's
like I said, that's yeah, Priya Korean.
I can imagine. I mean, a couple of people, Geeta Govindan came up and said hello and said it's Vishu, happy Vishu. So New Year's being celebrated
Yes.
across the country. Hello, Geeta. I was so engrossed in chatting with Nandita that I haven't even been looking at the comments on that side. Sham, can you put up Ritvika's comment again, because she had a question for Nandita, which I missed because I was just so engrossed in listening to what she says. But Lakshmi Karunakaran from Parag watching as well and saying, so delighted that Miracle is going to become a series. People, you heard it first here on Funky Rainbow. And I know Kalpavriksh, they are just absolutely lovely people. We hope we'll have the book. I mean, for us, when the new Indian children's books come out and we don't get them, right? We are like, why? We are promoting Indian children's books all through, really, right? So you have to complain to your publisher on our behalf,
On the
Nandita.
to-do list, moved to number one spot.
Yes,
Yes.
it has moved to the number one spot. In fact, we put Pearl Mascarenhas' Rockstar in a Sari, in this series as well, because, we recommended the book on Usha Uttup. Sham, did you put up that comment from Ritvika? She was asking us. Yeah. So it says, did you come across Debolina Mazumdar and Manobhaj? Sorry, I can't. Manobina Roy in your research. They were contemporaries of Vairwala in Calcutta. Ritvika is from Calcutta, and talking of two other photographers who were contemporaries of Humais, essentially. Did you come across, is what she asks.
No, not particularly. And a lot of my focus was and I know that while she won a lot of accolades for political, like I said, landscaping in her later years, but a lot of my focus were on those early years of street photography that launched her career, which was in Bombay at that time.
David Williams joins us from Australia, and he says she loved black and white photography. Nandita observes, and he's, of course, pointing to the fact that it's an art form all on its own. It's not dead yet. She's referring to what Muttama referred to earlier. Shams, a black and white absolute a black and white person, from start to finish of his photographs. And at one point, I think when it was a Buckaroo, or I'm not sure what was, maybe it was a Buckaroo in Pune, maybe 25, 30 writers had profile pictures that were black and whites that were taken by Sham, essentially, like, right? And he says, but I was shocked in recent weeks when many students in cinema class that I co-teach said that they disliked the exquisitely shot Ed Wood because they don't like black and white. And he was like, huh? The professor had to call on me to explain what layers of artistry they were missing. But David, I'm going to say Homai Vairawala, India's first woman photojournalist who worked extensively. I think she captured the transition of India from British rule to independence most gloriously through fantastic candid black and white photographs. So if your school is interested, my suggestion is introduce this book to them. Also introduce Homai Varewala's photographs to them. But Nandita, would you like to say something?
No, absolutely. And like I said, to capture the drama and emotions of the times that she did through her black and white photography, and she loved that medium. There were two things that she was very clear about. One, about the black and white and expressing herself through that, and then the second was about, like I said, you click it or you miss it, in her own words.
Yeah.
Not posed photography, but on the fly photography. So when these two things came together, that's how she actually captured so much emotion, genuine street level feelings. For example, during the transition time, passing of the guard, as that moved on, maybe the death of great leaders at that time, and she would be at their funeral. The kind of shots she often got
Yeah.
uh, were not the official press photographer's shots, really, but she told a story. Every photograph told a story.
And in
She was
black
a
and white.
storyteller in her own, and in black and white. So that was
There's also
really
that iconic one of, I remember the Nehru one, but also the Dalai Lama coming into India.
while coming into India
Yeah,
on
yeah,
monkey back,
that
I think. Yes.
Humai Vairwala's photos, essentially. And Apurva Ashok, who runs a wonderful book club for young readers and runs a lot of reading programs, saying, yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on all the books just now. Who clicked that pic is already in my FR card. So, Nandita, you have got to, you see how many people, Apurva, we thank you for the support. We just love the work that you do, in reaching these books to so many more people. Ours is a small circle. All the readers who come in like this and spread information and love of reading via these books, you just expand that circle more and more and more, and that's what we want. So we have to tell writers to tell their publishers that the books need to kind of get to us. So I wanted to ask you, I know we're pretty much just almost out of time, but tell me if there was one thing about Homai's trailblazing life that inspired you. Is there, one anecdote? And I know you've recounted so many, so it's probably tough to pick one. But I'm going to ask you to make that impossible choice. And since almost everybody watching, they're adults, their parents, teachers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, librarians. I mean, why do you think it's important that our young readers are actually influenced by the lives of iconic and iconoclastic women? Because often, and I've had this experience literally when you've given out books at the pop up saying, this is the life and times of a very, very, daring and rebellious queen. I've actually had parents who've come sometimes saying, maybe we can put this rebellious one away and give me like a less rebellious story, like, right?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, you know what?
Oh,
Why?
Rebel Girls. The lovely title of your
That's why.
session
That's
today.
why. And while they're looking away, I'm like, here, let me just rebel and give this one to you, like, right? So tell us, one Homai episode and, why it's important that parents and teachers and librarians introduce young readers, and irrespective of gender, to iconic and iconoclastic women.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, I've spoken a lot about some of, all the small pieces that went together to making her integrity, humor, uh, but her passion for what she did, her eye for photography quality. But you asked me to talk about one thing, and I think one of the biggest things really, and that's what that's what underlies the story is perseverance. She didn't
Yeah,
see barriers as barriers, so she had her eye on, what she believed she wanted to do and make of herself, and she persevered. So that's why, for me, the ultimate thing was 10 photographs in a row. And it went, and it was almost like a countdown, and each time, stuff happened, and I won't get into it, but she could have, given up and gone home and left it at that. At each and every one of those, as each and every one of those incidents unfurled, they were enough to send her back home, but she didn't. She went on, and she had it in her mind, okay, until it was 9 down, one to go. And then, so that absolute focus, perseverance, seeing something through, I think that's a quality today, that, I think that that's a quality that holds up so much else, in terms
absolutely.
of what we do, really.
And young readers and even old readers, and you just, you sometimes stuck in a mire of things, and you're like, why am I doing this? And then you're thinking, my god, you're doing this in just in times that are so conducive to doing these things. Look at them, like, right? I think it is
Absolutely.
that perseverance. You just picked a great quality, and because we live in a time of
Just
instant
failure. She just saw
gratification.
it as, none of these were bloopers, mistakes, failures, barriers, issues, challenges. It was just one other thing she had to find a way to overcome and continue on her path to what she did. And that really made her who she was. And we talk about how I can't even imagine what it must have been like to be in her shoes in those days. But
Yeah.
this was that quality, that did it for her. And I would love to introduce children to, that quality, be it her, be it Annapurna Devi, such iconic women. You had a whole beautiful list of recommendations today. And I think that, sort of also, cuts across all the names you've spoken about today. That's one thing that a lot of them share in common, really.
Perseverance, the ability to, and I'm sorry, I called her Asha Purna Devi. My gosh, me and my memory. But Annapurna Devi, Mit Auntie's joined in. She was, she had
So
something else, and she said, "My God, I'm scraping in to get a wee bit of Nandita magic." All in, I'm sure, Mit Auntie, you have copies of this book.
that was
You
magical
know,
with Vedante around.
magic in every page, thanks to Nandita and Priya, indeed. David again saying every photograph tells a story. I love this quote. In cinematography, it's also said that every shot should tell a story. Thanks so much, Nandita and Vidya, for catching me up. Oh, Sham, you've gone off on that quote. I can't read it out. For catching me up on this famous photographer. I really should have heard of her before now, but it's never too late, David. These books, meant to travel the globe to tell you that there were many, many women, iconic Indian women who walked paths, way before people did that everywhere else in the world. And Nandita, I started the bazaar with this story. Why I called this Good Morning Stories for Rebel Girls was because when Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls came out, the video that the creators made to crowdfund their book was that there were giant bookshelves everywhere, and they were trying to pick out books of women as scientists,
Mm.
women as doctors, women as pilots, women as engineers, and they couldn't find that many. And I kept telling, people at Funky Rainbow, that video got shared widely. And I'm not saying that it's enough. We can't have enough, obviously, of these kind of books. But I wanted to say that the Indian bookshelf is full of lovely stories and books on iconic women, right? And I wanted to say we have done a lot in creators, Indian creators, writers, and illustrators have done a lot to showcase the lives of pioneering women in exciting and interesting ways for readers of all ages, really. And so, hats off. Like, if I had a hat, I would doff it off
Yes.
to you, Nandita. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to put down Good Morning Stories for Rebel Girls as the title. Um,
I was very happy to be on the bazaar. But when I heard the theme, I was ecstatic. What a wonderful theme to be a part of. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nandita. I can see Geeta saying every photograph that we've shared of the pictures in the book, is a screenshot of memories. And David, sorry, Apurva is saying that this interaction with Nandita has been so enlightening. Thank you, Nandita, and thank you, FR, for organizing these fabulous bazaars, giving us glimpses into the writing process. Thank you to the creators who bring us books every week to be able to showcase for readers of all ages. And Muttama, of course, promptly reminds me that when the book came out, I went off on a girls to the rescue spree because I'm like, I'm going to show you how many girls from Indian children's books rescued me. Like, right here, that's what it was. But thank you so much for joining us today, Nandita.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, Vidya. I mean, these fantastic bazaars right from the times of pandemic and how they guided us through, and then and they're still live and on. It's really commendable, you
it's
and your
it's
team.
it's all the support from all the viewers and people, all of Nandita's books. I'm particularly showing you this brand new one, but we have all of Nandita's books except the Katha one with us. 99004 is our number. You can WhatsApp us, and lots of books on iconic Indian women for readers of all ages. Do get in touch with us to order these books. We love to see them flying off our shelves. And we know that Nandita has announced her new one here, so we're going to be waiting eagerly for this one. I'm sure she's going to tell us as soon as it's out, and when we know, you all know as well. Thank you so much, Nandita.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you. And I don't know where the time went. Really enjoyed our
Yeah,
chat.
absolutely love chatting. I'm going to say thank you to all the guests who joined us. So many of you. I know we can't respond to comments on Instagram, but Ritvika, Swati Vinay, Jeeta, Sujita Selvakumar, Mahima, Malavika Roy, Preeti, Anam Fatima, Kanishka Jain, Reading Rubies, Sainisha, Nikita, Jyoti Kunnur, Janvi Asha, Rahul, Learning Wizards, Deepa Chitran, Foodie Over Moody, Praveen, Reading Ruddies, Red Eye Chapters, String Story, next one, Serendipity, Sprocket Giraffe, Deepika Prakash, Bliss Medha, Srividya Venkat, Alpa Cheda, Sunila Gupte. You joined us on Instagram, not on Facebook today. Kriti, Toka Box, Neelakshi, Mandira Shah, what a pleasure. Book loving mom, Jokso Box, Aapki Sankhi Ladki, Mukta, Anglo Indian writers, Kalpavriksh Kids, so delighted. Narayan Swami, we know who that is. Thank you so much for joining us and for supporting the very bookstore that your wife works for. Shweta Sharan, Geeta Govindan, Rahul Badami, Merchant Ship, Loki Rani, Lakshmi Karunakaran, David Williams, Apurva Ashok, Mitanti, Divya, and Nidhi Singh. Thank you so much for joining us at the Bazaar. We'll be back with another one next week. We are really working quite hard to get that one together. We're going to have two guests. I'm not telling you anything more, but I know one of the viewers watching today already knows what next week's Bazaar is. And that's besides Mutama, who's part of our core team. People, I mean, do pick up these books, do order them from us, get your list ready, WhatsApp us on 99004 95665. The books of these iconic Indian women waiting to make their way into your shelves, to inspire you, to inspire your children, and to be read. We'll see you next week. Till then, take care and keep reading.